British entered World War II with a rifle designed 40 years earlier and a desperate need to arm millions of men. Some of those rifles became legends. Others were obsolete the day they arrived. Music. This is every British rifle used in WW2. Britain's rifle story is simple at the beginning. One platform dominates. The Lee Enfield. Fast, robust, and accurate enough, it was the workhorse that British troops carried into trenches in 1914 and still carried onto D-Day beaches in 1944. But that's not the whole picture. The British also used American rifles, obsolete Victorian-era guns, and even locally modified designs. They armed commandos with specialized weapons and handed colonial troops whatever was available. The scale is enormous. Millions of rifles, dozens of variants. This is every British rifle used in World War II. Starting with the standard issue, Lee Enfield No. WW2, Mark III. This is the famous SMLE, short magazine, Lee Enfield. British troops carried this bolt-action rifle through the trenches of World War I and into the opening campaigns of World War II. It holds 10 rounds in a detachable magazine. That's double what most bolt-action rifles carried. The action is smooth. Experienced riflemen could fire 30 aimed rounds per minute. German troops in 1914 thought they were facing machine guns. The problem is weight. It's heavy, it's long, and by 1939 it's showing its age. But it works. Millions exist, and when war breaks out, Britain doesn't have time to replace them. Moving on to the modernized standard. Lee Enfield, No. 4, Mark II. Britain knew the old SMLE needed updating. The No. 4 arrived in 1941. It's lighter, the rear sight is better. The manufacturing process is simplified for mass production. British and American factories both produced it. The 10-round magazine remains. The bolt is still fast. Troops liked it better than the old model. It became the primary British rifle for the rest of the war. By 1945, over 4 million had been built. It kept serving long after the war ended. Reliable, proven, and good enough against any enemy infantry rifle. Continuing with the sniper variant, Lee Enfield, No. 4, Mark I. Take a standard No. 4, select the most accurate examples from the factory, add a high-quality telescopic sight. Now you have a sniper rifle. The T stands for telescope. British snipers used this throughout the war. The 10-round magazine is a huge advantage. Most enemy snipers had 5-round rifles. A British sniper could fire twice as many shots before reloading. The accuracy is excellent, out to 600 yards, maybe further in the right hands. The scope is robust. It holds 0 even after rough handling. Thousands of these rifles were made. They served in North Africa, Italy, France, and the Pacific. British and Commonwealth snipers trusted them completely. Now the specialized jungle variant. Lee Enfield No. 5 Mark II Jungle Carbine. Britain needed a lighter rifle for jungle warfare in Burma. The No. 5 is a cut-down No. 4, shorter barrel, lighter weight, flash suppressor, rubber butt pad to handle the increased recoil. It's 5 pounds lighter than the standard rifle. Perfect for dense jungle where long-range shooting is rare. The problem is the recoil. It kicks hard. The accuracy suffers slightly because of the shorter barrel. Some versions developed a wandering zero problem where the sights shifted unpredictably. Troops had mixed feelings. It was easier to carry, but harder to shoot well. Production started in 1944. It saw heavy use in the Pacific and Southeast Asia, moving on to the American support, M1 Garand. Britain received thousands of American M1 Garand rifles through Lend-Lease. This is the semi-automatic rifle that gave U.S. infantry a massive firepower advantage. 8 rounds, gas-operated, no bolt to work, just aim and fire. British troops who got them loved them. The problem is logistics. The Garand fires 30.06 ammunition. Britain uses 303 British. That means separate supply chains. British quartermasters hated it. Most Garands went to specialized units or were kept in reserve. But for the soldiers who carried them, it was a significant upgrade over bolt-action rifles. It proved the future was semi-automatic, continuing with the American carbine, M1 carbine, another Lend-Lease weapon. The M1 carbine was designed for U.S. support troops who needed more than a pistol, but less than a full rifle. Britain used them the same way: light, handy, 15-round magazine. The .30 carbine round is weak compared to rifle cartridges, but for rear echelon troops, military police, and vehicle crews, it's perfect. British forces used thousands of them. Again, the logistics were a nightmare. Different ammunition, different parts. But the M1 carbine filled a gap that Britain's own rifles couldn't. It was better than a pistol and easier to carry than a Lee Enfield. Now the heavy rifle, Boy's anti-tank rifle. Britain needed a way for infantry to fight tanks. The Boy's rifle was the answer. Bolt action, 55 caliber, fires a massive armor-piercing round. It weighs 36 pounds. 2 men are needed to move it effectively. In 1939, it could penetrate light tank armor at close range. By 1941, German tanks had thicker armor. The Boys became obsolete almost overnight. The recoil is brutal. Even with the muzzle brake and padded shoulder rest, firing it is an ordeal. It remained in service because Britain had thousands of them and nothing better. Troops used it against bunkers, light vehicles, and aircraft on the ground. But it's a museum piece by 1943. But in the early war, it was the only anti-tank option infantry had. Moving on to obsolete service rifles. Pattern, 1914 Enfield, P14. This rifle was designed during World War I as a potential replacement for the SMLE. It was manufactured in the United States. Chambered in .303 British. The British decided to stick with the SMLE instead. Thousands of P14s sat in storage. When World War II broke out, Britain issued them to second-line troops, Home Guard units, and training formations. It's a good rifle, accurate, well-made. The rear sight is excellent, but it's slower than the SMLE. Only 5 rounds in the magazine. Troops who carried it in World War I liked it. Troops in World War II saw it as outdated. It still served. Britain needed every rifle it could find. Continuing with the American cousin, M19-17 Enfield. This is the American version of the P14, rechambered for .30-06, manufactured in the United States during World War I. When Britain received some through Lend-Lease or obtained them from stockpiles. Same strengths as the P14, solid construction, good accuracy, 5-round magazine. The problem is the ammunition. .30-06 is not .303 British. Logistical nightmare again. Britain mostly issued these to training units or kept them in reserve. They served, but they were never frontline weapons for British forces. Now the obsolete Victorian rifle. Lee Metford. This rifle predates the Lee Enfield. It was Britain's service rifle in the 1890s. By World War II, it's a relic. Some were still in storage. The Home Guard received them. Colonial forces in backwater garrisons carried them. They work. The action is similar to the SMLE, but the rifling was designed for black powder ammunition. It wore out quickly with modern smokeless powder. Nobody wanted to carry a Lee Metford in World War II, but Britain was desperate for rifles in 1940. Anything that could shoot was issued. Moving on to older Enfields. Lee Enfield, number 1 Mark Fern and Mark II. These are even older versions of the SMLE. Produced before World War I, slight differences in sights and fittings. By 1939, most had been upgraded or replaced, but some remained in storage. The Home Guard got them. Training units used them. Colonial troops in quiet sectors carried them. They're functionally identical to the Mark III, just older. Britain issued every rifle it had when invasion threatened in 1940, continuing with the specialized commando weapon, Delisle carbine. This is one of the quietest firearms ever made. A Lee Enfield action fitted with a .45 ACP barrel and a massive integral suppressor. It fires subsonic pistol ammunition. The sound is barely audible beyond 50 yards. British commandos used it for silent killing during raids. The suppressor works because the cartridge is naturally subsonic. No supersonic crack, just a mechanical click. The problem is the range. .45 ACP is a pistol round. Effective range is maybe 100 yards. Accuracy is decent, but this is a specialized tool. only a few hundred were made. Commandos loved it. For everyone else, it was irrelevant. Now the experimental, semi-automatic rifle, number 6. Britain experimented with semi-automatic rifles during the war. The number 6 was one attempt, based on the Lee-Enfield action but modified for self-loading. It never reached production. Britain couldn't afford to retool factories while fighting for survival. The concept was sound, but the timing was wrong. By the time Britain had breathing room to develop new rifles, the war was almost over. The number 6 remained a prototype, moving on to another experimental design. Rifle, number 7. Another attempt at a semi-automatic rifle, different design from the number 6. Again, it never reached production. Britain's industrial capacity was stretched thin. Every factory was producing proven weapons. There was no room for experimentation. The number 7 showed promise, but it stayed on the drawing board, continuing with captured weapons. German Kar 98K. British troops captured thousands of German rifles. Some units used them, especially in the confusion of the early war. The Kar 98K is a good rifle. Bolt action, 5-round magazine, accurate, reliable. The problem is ammunition. British troops couldn't rely on captured German 7.92mm cartridges. Using enemy weapons is always risky. If you run out of ammunition, you have a club. Most captured Kar 98Ks were studied and scrapped. Some ended up as war trophies. Now the Italian capture. Carcano M1891. British forces in North Africa and Italy captured Italian rifles. The Carcano is a bolt-action rifle. 6-round magazine. Adequate accuracy. Italian troops used it in both world wars. British forces rarely carried captured Carcanos. The 6.5mm ammunition was uncommon. The rifle itself wasn't particularly impressive. Most were collected and shipped back to depots. A few ended up in the hands of partisan forces that Britain supported. Moving on to colonial rifles. SML-2 variants used by Commonwealth forces. Canadian, Australian, Indian, New Zealand, and South African forces all used Lee-Enfield rifles. Many were produced locally. Canadian factories made hundreds of thousands. Indian arsenals refurbished and modified older rifles. These are functionally identical to British-issued rifles, but the production sources were global. The British Empire's manufacturing capacity was essential to keeping troops armed, and finally, the locally modified rifles. Units in the field sometimes modified their rifles. Shortened barrels for jungle use before the official jungle carbine existed. Improved sights, custom stocks. These weren't official variants, just soldiers adapting their weapons to their environment. The British Army generally discouraged field modifications, but in the chaos of war, troops did what worked. Some of these modifications worked well, others didn't. None were standardized. That's every major British rifle used in World War II, from the legendary Lee-Enfield that served for half a century to the specialized commando weapons that almost nobody knew existed. The British entered the war with a 40-year-old rifle design and ended it the same way. Because the Lee-Enfield worked, it was fast, it was reliable, and Britain could produce millions of them. Which rifle is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for the next video.